A very good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining this webinar. We're good to go. I see still people dropping in, but I really would like to start off with the presentation because it's quite a story to tell, and I'm all set. So I'm good to go. The the dog is outside in the garden, so no barking on the background. And I did hide our front bell from the door, so we should be good to go. So thanks again. My name is Jean-Pierre, or JP. I'm based in the Netherlands. I'm part of Autodesk Distribution, and I act as a technical sales specialist for media and entertainment. So I mainly look after VDS, Max, Maya, Mudbox in the world of design visualization, games, and feature film on a global level. So I do travel quite a lot. Besides technical sales, I'm also teaching end users via our channel partners with both Max and Maya. So I do have some kind of twisted mind. For instance, I was teaching Max yesterday and Maya last week in Switzerland. So I'm also able to talk about technical details and I'm quite good to position both products next to each other. And that's where it's all about when you start working or thinking about to start working with a media and entertainment collection. In the past, it's obvious the collection was a suite. Back then, it didn't make, well, for the most companies, it didn't make sense to start working it because due to the overlap. But today, the story is completely different, and I'm gonna explain you why it's different and what's in it for you, and why it's so interesting to invest in an Autodesk Media Entertainment Collections. If you have any questions, I'm open for questions. What you can do is type your questions in via the chat panel. And at the end of my presentation, I'm gonna answer your questions. I'm not gonna open up all the phone lines because then it's gonna be chaotic or interesting to say. So if you have any questions about any slide deck or any particular other question, just type them in the chat, and I will answer your questions at the end of my presentation. All right. So the Media and Entertainment Collection. It's quite obvious that it's a complete collection with a lot of tools. So it lets animators, modelers, visual effects artists access the tools they need to create compelling effects, or believable 3D characters, or massive digital worlds. Besides that, you can start sharing your assets between one to another one. And that can be done on one-click workflows or by manually exporting a file, for instance, from Max into Maya, or from Mudbox to Max, or into Maya. Recap Pro, Arnold rendering, a lot of tools again are available in the collection. And I completely do understand that there is a huge overlap, particularly between Max and Maya. There's nobody in the world who's actually working with the same products. Especially, it's a different persona, okay? Or you're an instructor like me, which has to deliver technical training and presentations in both products. But otherwise, in the production industry, you're still a Max guy or a Maya guy. And still both products have their own strengths. So what I like to do is take the tool you need for the job and start adding additional tools which are available in the collection. And I will talk a bit more about that. All right. So in general, in the collection, there's literally everything you need. End-to-end creative tools for animators, modelers, and visual effects artists, okay, for creating compelling effects and so on. And again, to repeat myself, it's all about the workflow. Okay, so if you create something like an artist impression or a reference plane, you want to reuse that. Same goes for your sculpted prop in Mudbox. You want to reuse that. You want to animate on that. Okay, so if we go from storyboarding, and that's where we're going to start, through production, you have access to all the powerful and proven tools, such as Maya, 3ds Max, Sketchbook Enterprise, and many, many more. And also, with regards to the latest subscription model, you do get frequently updates for all the products available in the collection. Okay, so again, in general, the power of workflows, that's very, very important. And also, you want to prepare yourself for the future. Okay, so you can build a powerful 3D animation pipeline for complex simulations, special effects, and so on. And you never say no to a big project, and that can be very challenging. But the world is changing rapidly, so you can start scaling your projects with cloud-enabled tools and services, which is also very interesting. And that's also something where I'm gonna talk about in a bit. Right. So this is the data where I'm gonna talk about. So it's quite interesting to see that this is literally a combination, and hopefully the video plays back well without any lag. This is a 3D asset. It's animated in Max. It's modeled in Maya, and I do realize that's also a bit weird, but because we can both model and animate in Max and Maya. The most interesting part is the background. That's done on reality capture. So literally pictures going into a cloud algorithm, and the cloud algorithm will automatically generate a 3D model. So I'm gonna show you how to do that, how to achieve that, and how to work with the data. So again, it's a complete workflow. Okay, and the workflow is mainly focused on feature film, the world of advertising, um, uh, television series like Game of Thrones, and games. Okay, and it all starts with concept sketches. You always need to have references, and that the reference can be a blueprint, it can be a hand-drawn sketch. That can be a reference, because that's something what needs to go to the modeler. So the concept artist, they need tools like for concept art creation. And that's a very specific start, where we start working with our storyboards, right? And the first approach when you are using a M&E collection would be to start using Sketchbook Pro. And Sketchbook Pro exists for a very long time. It came over actually with the acquisition of Alias in 2006. And it's still alive and kicking. It's part of the collection, and with the collection you do get access to the Sketchbook Pro Enterprise Edition. In the past, also Autodesk had many other different versions, more for consumers, but now it seems to be that most of the development is going on to the enterprise editions of Sketchbook Pro, and it's still running on a in combination with a tablet or Wacom, or maybe you have a Surface. It supports the latest Surface, which is quite nice. And what I really like about, while I'm playing back the video about Sketchbook, is that you literally can sketch in symmetry. So based on a symmetry line, you're sketching a symmetric model, which is handy, of course. And what also a lot of people like about Sketchbook is the responsiveness and the feel with the brushes and the pens and the hard eraser tools. It's layer based, so you can work with layers just in Photoshop. It has French curves and which do feel very, very nice to work with. And you can of course also start working with additional images like JPEGs, PNG files. And they can easily be transformed on top of the underlying surface, so you can quite easily do some warping kind of effects, and then just use the erase brush and then start by adding some blending modes or transparency, which is also quite known in Photoshop. So it's a very nice tool. It doesn't have hundreds and hundreds of buttons, and yeah, and again, it supports obviously a surface and also a Wacom, and it's a very intuitive tool. And this is where you start with concept sketching. You need a sketch, and the sketch again is going to be used as a reference plane in 3D, because the modeler needs to build his 3D model based on the concept art, and it still has the look and feel of the marking menus, what you see in the lower left corner. Originally developed by Alias back in the days, and again it's intuitive, it works in symmetry, and again the brushes and so on, they feel really responsive, and it's a tool for the artist. Okay, so that's where it all starts, right? And then again, then it goes into any of the 3D modeling products or DCC tools, which stands for digital content creation. And I do realize again that there is an overlap between 3ds Max and Maya, but don't forget that still it's a 50-50 in the world of games. So it's still 50% of the users are using 3ds Max, 50% are using Maya, and literally the artist itself, he or she decides what tool he or she wants to use. So it's not about the software, it's about the artist, and the artist is doing his or her job with or Max or Maya. And I do know all the strengths. You know, Max is still quite good in polygon modeling, and the modifier stack, it's unique in 3ds Max. The other side, when it comes down to character animation and rigging, Maya has much more interesting tools. Or when it comes down to XGen for creating hair and fur. So there is a balance, you know, and the good thing is you can start modeling in 3ds Max, and you can still export your FBX, even if you do any creases, that will be recognized by Maya, and vice versa. So if you do a crease set in Maya, if you send it back to 3ds Max, he will recognize the creases you have been creating. And again, there is a balance. Between both products. And what I see, most of the people, they're using or Max or Maya, and on top of that, they're using additional tools. So that's about the DCC content creation. I'm not going to dive too deep in 3ds Max and Maya today. It's more about the rest of the stuff in the collection and workflow. Okay. So when it comes down to characters, it's quite obvious. We have multiple levels. If you really want to model a character, well, we can model both in Max and Maya. If you want to start animating, 3ds Max still has the CAD tools, the character animation toolkit, while Maya has the human IK integration with the story tool from Motion Builder. The other side, 3ds Max still has the populate, but it's well, bit more like sim. It's more from architectural approaches from a far distance. Looks good, but don't get too close. Okay. For both products, you can also use the character generator. So if you have a Media Entertainment Collection, you will get access to the character generator as well. And the character generator is nothing else than a cloud-based service. So based on your Autodesk ID, you just log onto the character generator, and in there you start customizing your 3D model. And you can do facial expressions, you can do change the cloth style, color of the eyes itself. And it's a super easy to use tool, and you will get at the end a fully rigged character, which then can be sent straight into Max or into Maya. I just want to let you see you guys a sneak peek. So I do have it running in the background. Yeah, hear him? Okay. So this is the character generator. Again, it's a cloud-based service. It's using cloud credits, which you have access to, but it also has when you do a low-res character generation, it doesn't take any cloud credits in account. Okay, so how to start is it's super easy. Just do in the upper left corner. I'm gonna do a new character. And then it's gonna ask me, just like if I'm building an avatar in a game, so what is the artistic style? So this is the free of charge one. So if you see in the upper right corner a blue circle, that means this has to this needs cloud credits, but you have access to them based on your subscription and blah blah. So I'm gonna select this one, the standard, and then we can define, okay, do I need to have the default female, or do I want a very specific 3D character? So if I select that, then we can start customizing it. So I'm gonna hit customize, and then it's gonna show me all the available customizations I can do. And again, if you see the blue circle, it's cloud credit based, and without the blue circle, it's always free of charge. So if I select any of a different face, it's automatically gonna update. So what I can do, I can just drag it over here, and it's gonna do an update. Okay, and then we can still start blending between these if I want, or I can literally start changing different things. Maybe I want to do something with the eyes itself, or maybe with the ears. So this can be, well, with complete detail, this can be customized. Okay, when it comes down to skinning, so literally not skinning as the skin modifier or the heat map skinning in Maya, but just the skin color. So basically texture. So I can select this one. This is the texture I want, and that's gonna update the model. And again, it's super easy. It's just click and go. Same goes for the eye color. Let me do some very interesting alien colored eyes for this particular example. So I'm going to use that. Then we have the hairstyle, and again, I'm just clicking and customizing the character I want to build up, which then can be exported to both Max and Maya. And again, it's fully rigged, so I can immediately start animating it with my CAD toolkit or with the Human IK toolkit in Maya. Then we have the posture itself, so I can change all the body parts if I want to. And the last thing is all has to deal with the clothing, so I can do that. I can change the top, the bottom, the shoes, and so on. And again, I'm just selecting, I'm clicking, and this is gonna save the character. It's not a generated character yet. That's something I need to do in the end. So when I finish this one, I'm gonna finish it. I'm gonna give this a name. I'm gonna call this my webinar JP. I'm gonna hit OK, and it's saving the character. And from these saved characters, I'm able to generate the character. So now it's being saved, and from here I can generate a character. And this is very interesting because now I can define what kind of poly resolution do I want. So again, blue circle means cloud credits. So if I go up to a high quality poly resolution, that's what I want. Quads, yeah, please give me quads. No, I don't like triangles, of course, because otherwise I need to retopologize the geometry. And then we can define, okay, do I want a generic FBX, or do I want a Maya binary file or VDS Max FBX file? You can still set the character height, the textures, for the close, the spec map, and normal map. It's quite good. And if you want to have facial expressions as well, and the quality of the resolutions with character goes up. And this is going to take me 5 cloud credits. So if I hit generate, then I'm able to download the file, and then I can implement it in my production in both Max or Maya. So that's the character generator, which is also part of the entertainment collection. And again, it's not meant to be used for AAA games, but at least this is much better than the populate characters in 3ds Max. And again, these are completely fully rigged, so I can drive them with my own mocap data if I want. Something else About reality capture. That's also which comes with the Media Entertainment Collection. So we have a tool called Recap Pro in the collection. And Recap Pro does exist of two different options. So the first option has to deal with point clouds. So imagine you're on set and you want to capture the existing environment to reality. So you can use a laser scanner, which is quite expensive to get, but you can also hire as a service. Then you get the output of a laser scanner is nothing else than a point cloud. So literally points in XYZ space with the texture, the color of the object in the real world. Okay, so based from a point cloud scan, we can start adding our 3D objects into the existing environment, and then we can start animating on top of that, depending on the solution. So let me quickly show you one example. So this is the application Recap Pro, and Recap Pro again is meant to be used for point clouds. So laser scans can be opened up, can be indexed, can be cleaned up. You can do a clipping to clean it up, because you always get noise on the background when you start scanning, laser scanning, right? And again, this is just a point cloud, so just points in XYZ space. Interesting is, imagine if I need to do a visualization product because there's a new machine and I want to render the new machine in this particular machine park. So my best approach would be then to use 3ds Max. And the reason for that is because 3ds Max can load point clouds by default. And not only Max is capable of loading the point clouds, but it can also render the point clouds by using Arnold as the renderer. Okay, and I'm going to talk about Arnold later, but Arnold is capable of rendering native point clouds. So you necessarily don't need to convert your point clouds into a mesh, which makes it saves me a huge amount of time, because there is a very particular shader for Arnold for the point clouds. It's the S user. There's a user shader, and it just renders exactly the same color which was 3D laser scanned. For Maya, you need to have an additional plugin to be able to import the point cloud. But again, Arnold is Arnold, so Arnold does have exactly the same shaders in both Max and Maya. So then if you have access to the plugin, you can render the point cloud in Maya as well. And the cool thing is, because then you can do some kind of montage, 3D montage. So you have your point cloud, you have your existing 3D model, you just place your 3D model in the point cloud, you start adding some lights, and then you start rendering some shadows in the point cloud based off the 3D object. So that's option number one. Very interesting. If you ever want to scan an existing building inside, outside, and so on. And Recap Pro, again, that's the tool for cleaning up your point clouds. Or you can also, if you want, you can start meshing them. So you can create from a point cloud a 3D mesh. But then you do get, well, a huge amount of triangles, quite obvious. But that's the other approach we have, quite interesting, and that also has to deal with reality capture. So literally, you can start taking photos on a existing object, and it can be a clay sculpted object, it can be a chair, it can be a table, a person, yourself. So you can you can reality capture yourself if you want, and then send it to a 3D print service. I'm not going to do that because one JP is already enough, but you know, that's very interesting technique if you want to you want to recreate something in the existing world, or you want to, based on that, reshape it. So that's recap photo. So this recap photo is also part of the recap family, so you do get access to it within the Media Entertainment Collection. And again, you just take photos, And a lot of object work, some doesn't work. Like if you have a chrome ball, that's not gonna work, or glass, because the algorithm is not gonna recognize the overlaps between the taken photos. Okay, so what's the idea? You take the photos, and it starts with a minimum of 20 photos and goes up to 200 photos, and then you're gonna send those photos into the cloud, and in the Autodesk cloud, and in the cloud there's a quite smart algorithm running, which is gonna detect all the adjacent points in the photos, and based on that, it's gonna create a 3D model for you. Again, it's gonna be quite detailed, so way too much information. So we need to clean it up. We have tools for that, and then we can, well, we can literally 3D print it. We can send it to a game engine, or we can just start using it in both 3ds Max or Maya, which is very nice. So this is one of the examples of a customer in Japan, AEX Inc. And in the past, they were doing a lot of stop motion, and they still do stop motion, but they use recap technology for that. So they still handcraft all the props, the characters, and they start hand painting them. And then it's quite obvious, they do the reality capture. So they start taking all photos from different angles, and in which order, that's not the most important thing, because the software is smart enough to recognize in which order the photos are being taken. So they just take photos of these kind of objects, and then they bring these into 3ds Max, and then they start adding animation. So then they start adding camera animation, they start adding particles, and it looks quite nice when it's completely rendered. So I'm gonna play it back. So that's a very nice example in the world of media entertainment for recap. Okay, and again, yeah, you save a tremendous amount of time. Like in the past, when with traditional sculpting, well, you had to sculpt the creature, then you had to cast, you had to scan it, clean it, model it, bake it, and polish it. So when you start using recap technology, well, you save a huge amount of time, because you sculpt it, you still need to sculpt it or to build it with wood or something like that. Then you use the recap technology. Then we need to clean it up, quite obvious, and then we can publish it. And the publishing again can be 3D printing, or can be sent to a game engine, or 3ds Max or Maya, which is very interesting. This is another example. So what I'm gonna do, let me quickly pause the video. So this is based on the actual project. So we did the sketching before of the spaceship. Now we want to generate the 3D background based on existing photos. So when you start recap photo, this is what you're gonna see. So it's create 3D, where we can literally define, okay, what kind of 3D object do we want? So we can use aerial photos as an input. So in this particular scenario, based on a drone with an attached camera, we took a huge amount of photos, and based on the aerial photos, recap photo is gonna generate a 3D data for us. Or do we have a static object? That's the other one. So just by taking your phone or your camera, the digital camera, and just taking photos. Okay, so that's the only thing you need to be aware of. So what kind of pictures do you have? Then you start browsing. So again, these are photos taken with a drone in California. You're gonna open them. Some of them will have GPS data, some don't. So it's gonna define the project name. and what kind of output do you want to have. And after some time, depending on the queue, but in general it's quite quick, you are able to download a model. So this is the actual result, and look at the detail. It's amazing, and it still has noise. That's quite obvious, but you know, most of the part, what we need to have this as a background for the spaceship, it's well, it's looking so good. And again, in recap photo, we're still in recap photo. This is where you, when you download the file, where we're gonna clean it up. There will be some holes and so, and the orientation of the model itself will be wrong or can be wrong. So we easily can go into, if you want, into the model settings. This is where you find your transformation. So we can pick a surface, and based on that surface, we can do a 90-degree rotation, or based on a tripod. So we have some translations like move and rotate. And if you want, we can also scale the model based on a reference. So imagine there are some cars in there. It's again, it's quite a large environment, but again, the detail, it's amazing. So based on the existing cars, what we can do is just measure 2 points and set those 2 points to a value in the real world. So in this particular scenario, in meters, the distance of that particular car is 5 meters. And based on that input, the model will automatically scale to the right dimensions of the terrain. Again, you will also always have some noise, some gaps. So we have retopologize in recap. There's also a close gap fill holes available in there, and it works with a brush. So you can just start tracing over the holes, and it will automatically start creating smooth additional geometry, and that will close the geometry in the end. And this is, again, look at the amount of detail you get on photos. And then we export it out to an FBX, which can be read by both Max Maya, or we export it out to an OBJ file. So both are available. I like to work with FBX quite a lot because that's the backbone of also game engines and so on. So when we export the FBX, we're good to go. We can immediately import the file in Max Maya. The downside, and that's the next thing, is quite obvious. When you look at the image in the left side, it's about the dense tries, because this is the result. When you start doing reality capture, you don't get clean quads. That would be wishful thinking, but you never know on one day. So we need to retopologize the mesh. So retopologizing, that's what we need to do to be able to sculpt based on the model, and to have some proper UV layouts. Otherwise, with triangle meshes, it's way too hard to define my belt seams of my UV seams. So that's something which is quite obvious. So retopo of course can be done in Max. So if I want to do a retopo in Max, I just use my freeform ribbon tab. So in the ribbon, this is where you will find the retopo tools. In Maya, all the retopologizing tools are based in the modeling toolkit. So in the modeling toolkit, you will find your retopo tools, where you literally make the existing surfaces a live surface, and then you can start tracing over in a symmetrical approach. So it's immediately in a symmetrical approach, and then you're retopologizing the data. So literally you're tracing over the underlying way too dense mesh, and the output is a much better mesh. Also, another very interesting approach would be Mudbox. And Mudbox is also, it's part of the collection. And while Mudbox is still known for sculpting and painting, it also has some very interesting retopologize tools. And a lot of people thought, well, Mudbox is gonna die, but it's not, because I think a couple of months back, there was a new version, Mudbox 2018.2 update with dynamic tessellation, and that was for the complete Mudbox community. That was a surprise. But that was something where a lot of artists were waiting for, finally to have some adaptive tessellation. So when you start sculpting, that you automatically get additional tessellation based on the pressure of the brush. So still Mudbox, it's part of it, of the collection, still being used for sculpting. And more interesting, still that's very strong in Mudbox is the 3D paint environment, based on paint layers and blending modes, and so on. So when it comes down to retopologize, Mudbox has a very interesting technology built in, the retopologize tool. So you can do a basic retopo on a complete mesh. The tricky part can be that you will lose too much details. For instance, for example, around the lips area, or around the ear or eyes, and that's why if you want to preserve more detail with that particular areas, we start drawing some curves. And this is just in Mudbox, you draw a curve, it sticks to the surface, it will trace the surface, and those curves are just guidelines. So within the curves, he's gonna keep the amount of detail. It's gonna use the curves as a guideline for the retopo. And again, in Mudbox, it's quite impressive how good the retopo tools are. And then it's of course quite obvious. It's gonna generate a new mesh. You can automatically transfer all the details to sculpt the detail, or sculpt layers or paint layers, depending on what you want to do. So retopo Mudbox makes totally sense to have that in the collection if you work with scan data, but still if you want to sculpt something. So you have something in Max or Maya, and you don't, I know Maya has all these sculpt brushes of Mudbox, painting is still missing. You can still send it to Mudbox, do some additional sculpts, paint with it, and then send it back to both Max or Maya. So in this particular example with the spaceship, I'm just doing 3D paint again. Based on a layer. So I'm gonna do a basic paint layer, a diffuse layer for the color. I'm gonna set the color, and I'm just gonna do a flood from camera. So that will automatically give me a painted layer. And then based on a stencil, I'm able to start painting some additional shapes on top of that. So just stencils, just white images with a brush. And again, it's all layer based. Okay, so if I don't like it, I can adjust the layer. I can just literally change the transparency of the layer. I can change the strength of the layer, or I can change the blending mode. Okay, also very nice, Mudbox has a tight integration with Photoshop, so you can send, if you want, all the painted layers to a PSD file. And then in Photoshop, if you change the PSD file, we can send it back into Mudbox. Or you can change, in this particular example, the color of the layer itself. So a lot of filters are involved in there. And again, it's mostly known for the 3D painting, but again, when it comes down to retopologizing geometry, the retopo tool in Mudbox are very good. And also the dynamic tessellation introduced a couple of months back in the latest Mudbox update, right? So then when it comes down to rendering, and this is literally the difference, and this is why the collection makes so much sense now, because you do get access to Arnold. So you do have, with every media entertainment collection, you do get access to 5 Arnold licenses. And the license model from Arnold is exactly the same as V-Ray. So that literally means if you install on your workstation a 3ds Max or a Maya, you have one Maya license, but that particular Maya license is bound to the workstation. Okay, so if you want to start network rendering with Backburner, and you want to set up render slaves, then you need to have additional Arnold licenses. So when you don't have a collection and you want to start running on 5 servers, you need to have 5 additional Arnold licenses, which is which is already expensive compared with the offer we have in the collection. And I know many users started using V-Ray in the past because Mental Ray was very difficult. And I started using Mental Ray myself as well. I believe in 1998 or something. I started using Mental Ray, and it took me some time to master all the settings and understand what was going on. So way back, many users then switched it over to V-Ray because V-Ray, the Chaos Group guys, were offering templates and material libraries. And most of the V-Ray guys who switched back then are still using it. And then the main reason is the whole pipeline, all the materials, all their objects are based on V-Ray materials. Okay, and Arnold is in the world of Autodesk, it's quite new, but as a renderer itself, it's not, because it exists for over 2 decades. Okay. Autodesk get rid of Mental Ray in Maya 2017, and Arnold was first introduced in Maya, and then for 3ds Max it was introduced in Max 2018. So when you look at the current 3ds Max or Maya render engines, you have Arnold as the preferred render engine. And I completely do realize that the background of Arnold is mainly all the Hollywood blockbuster movies, or things like Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones, Pixamondo started using rendering with V-Ray, but the scenes were getting bigger, the data sets were getting larger and larger with every episode, so they couldn't handle it to render it, so they switched over to Arnold. It doesn't have a main focus on design visualization, but I see a lot of people are starting to using it, especially the guys who are using, for instance, CAD software, and they start rendering in Maya or Max, or they do additional external renderers like Keyshot. And if they see Arnold, they like it because it's very quick. It's very quick, and it can handle a huge amount of data. So this is the spaceship rendered in Arnold, and it's quite obvious there's being an HDR, image-based lighting, is being used, and that's something which is for years standard now, and that's something what is also quite obvious available with Arnold. So the good thing is Arnold is a plugin. So and I think every 2 months there's an update with tons of new stuff in Arnold, and the really good thing is it's a plugin, so you necessarily don't need to reinstall your Max or Maya, and it's many plugins. So also not only for Autodesk software, but also for compatible software. But we do know that in a huge production pipeline, it's not only Autodesk, it's also side effects with Houdini and Cinema 4D from Max and Katana. So it's a plugin, so you can use the 5 Arnold licenses in the collections for not only your Max and Maya, and that's really nice. So that we have many plugins, but it's just one license, which is very good. So you can literally share the license. So compared to feature sets and so on, if you literally compare it, V-Ray, of course, what I told you, it's good, it's very good, it's fast, it has tons of developments going on. It runs both on GPU, CPU, but when you are totally honest and when you start using it, V-Ray, it is more complicated, much more complicated than Arnold. This is, for instance, these are all the settings which you can find back in the V-Ray global illumination settings. Mental Ray was the same story. That was even more difficult, and NVIDIA pulled the plug, so Mental Ray doesn't exist anymore. And this is Arnold. I know it's quite small. It's still some settings, but again, compared with V-Ray, Arnold is absolutely user-friendly, and that's a big advantage. I was out yesterday teaching a customer Arnold for VDS Max, and he said, well, this is very user-friendly, and he was absolutely happy with the availability of Arnold in 3ds Max. So well, Arnold is quite obvious, does have a lot of lights. So for instance, this is an example of a mesh light, which is quite nice. I don't like to use the self-illuminated materials, because with self-illuminated materials or self-emission in the shaders, the material, you do get a lot of noise. So with the Arnold mesh light, which is just an object mesh light, and select the object you want to be that it's acting as the mesh light, you do get less noise, which is quite nice. And besides that, it does have a physical sky, it does have a skylight, and it does have a quad light for a portal, and a spotlight with fog and environment effects and so on. So many common stuff you probably already understand from different renders. So when it comes down to shaders, Arnold is very responsive. Within the Arnold render view in Maya, or the active shade in 3ds Max, it's very quick. You instantly get updates when you change any of the shader parameters. And we do have a bunch of shaders. Okay, so it's quite obvious we have these skin and subsurface scattering shaders. Shaders for hair and fur for volumetric rendering. So open VDBs can be done very quick, and hard surfaces and all of them put together. So just to show you some examples, I was wondering, should I do it live? But then, yeah, probably I'm running out of time. So just some examples. So the hair and fur shader, again, it is Arnold. So if you understand the Arnold for 3ds Max, you also do understand how to set it up in Maya. Slight differences though, like in Max, it's the standard surface, that's the Arnold shader, and in Maya, it's the AI standard surface, but it shows exactly the same parameters. And same goes with hair and fur. So the hair is mainly driven on melanin, and that's a physical accurate value. So the amount of melanin in your hair defines if you have dark or blonde hair. So based on the melanin value, you do get immediately a difference between the hair color, and it can be driven by redness value, or you can do it with a ramp, okay, a ramp shader in Maya, or a gradient ramp in 3ds Max. So if you want to have some funky hairstyles, we can do that as well. The main material in Maya for Arnold is the standard surface. The standard surface is a physical accurate shader, so it does have, well, a basic layer with the base color, basic component. It does have a reflection or specular layer. It does have a coating layer. It does have transmission. It is based on a Fresnel value. It has presets, so you can immediately choose from quite a bunch of presets. In 3ds Max, it's also the standard surface, but it also supports the physical material in 3ds Max. Okay, so the standard surface it's a totally understandable material because it's physical accurate, so it's quite easy to explain and to get some very nice results very quick. This is an example of the standard volume. So OpenVDB can be imported in Maya and in 3ds Max, and then with the standard volume shader, you can start rendering it based on density. You get some these kind of renders. And also very interesting, quite recently announced, is that a polygonal based object can also act as a standard volume. which is quite nice. So you can literally model something like this. And if you assign the standard volume shader with Arnold, you can literally start rendering this out like some kind of cloud-based shape or foam, which is quite nice. So it does support not only OpenVDB files, but also just polygonal meshes, which then can be rendered. Also, Arnold has a car paint shader, so it's a fully completed detailed car paint shader. So it has a flip-flop, so based on the angle of direction you're viewing your metallic, it can give you a different color. So that's quite obvious to see what's going on. And if you base that on a ramp shader, just on a ramp, the colors ramp, this is the effect you're gonna get when you start rendering with Arnold. Also, very interesting, Arnold has a dedicated VR camera. Besides the VR camera, it also has a fisheye camera built in recently and a cylindrical camera. And what I really like about the Arnold VR camera is that you can do side-by-side rendering on a super high quality because it's rendering. Um, and you can set up the amount of resolution you want. And then, for instance, when you render it out to a 360-degree image, you can take the latest Oculus Go VR device, so you don't need any phone or any cable. You just literally connect for one time your phone with the app to the device. You upload the image to it, and then you can view it. And you again, you don't need a phone in the Oculus Go because it's standalone VR, and very interesting to do that, and it's cheap as well. Um, so that's also a very interesting approach for the VR camera in Arnold, which is available. Also recently introduced, Arnold does have a dedicated toon shader, so we can do all kind of toon shaders with Arnold, both in Max and Maya. Again, that's exactly the same. So this is still image. Quite obvious, can also be in in animation if you want to do that. Um, and yeah, the main challenge, and it's probably if you know in the world of rendering, is denoising. So when you start in the past rendering with mental ray, it started with buckets, and you had no clue till you had 50% of the rendering done what the quality was going to be. Well, latest render engines, they are based on denoising. So you literally, when the initializing is done, when all your geometry is being retriangulated and the render starts kicking in, you do get a lot of noise. And based on the hardware or render time, you will get rid of the noise. What's very interesting with Arnold for both Max and Maya, we have two different denoisers. Okay, so first of all, Arnold has the NVIDIA Optics AI denoiser. So it's based on machine learning, on deep learning or artificial intelligence. And that particular denoiser solution from NVIDIA is GPU based. So that literally means if you have a dedicated GPU, you can run the optics denoiser straight on Arnold, and that is meant to be used or in active shade in 3ds Max or in the Arnold render view in Maya. That's not meant to be used as the final render. That's a different approach, but it's gonna help when you're going to do look development, for instance, for the shaders or the lighting, because with a dedicated GPU, especially the 100 series of NVIDIA, very expensive. But yeah, it's just one investment in a graphics card instead of hundreds and hundreds of Arnold licenses. So again, there's always a balance between that. So again, the optics denoiser, that's for in the active shade with 3ds Max or the Arnold render view. The other one, if you don't have access to a very expensive NVIDIA card, is the Arnold denoiser. And the Arnold denoiser is a let's call it a final frame or production frame denoiser. It runs on the CPU and it's just using an algorithm. So when you're done with rendering, imagine you still have noise visible. You run the Arnold denoiser, and you get access to the Arnold denoiser by using the render elements in or the render setup in 3ds Max, and also in the AOVs, or AOVs, that's the right word. Yeah, sorry for that. AOVs in both the setup of Maya and 3ds Max. In the past, in the previous versions, it had yet to start a command in a shell, what's quite annoying. But now there's a full UI available for denoising your images, again based on the noise, the Arnold denoiser running on the CPU. And this image is a particular denoised image. Okay, so that already concludes my presentation. I do have some time left for questions. So to wrap it up, to conclude, again, the complete Media Entertainment Collection is really an end-to-end creative tools for entertainment creation. And again, since the Arnold offer we have in the collection, it's completely worthwhile to really have a look and to have a discussion with your reseller. What are we using now? What is our potential in the next months? Of what kind of projects are we going to do next year? And to start a conversation about that, because again, it's very interesting, the Arnold offer, to have that as part of the Media Entertainment Collection. And that's the differentiator compared with the previous suite. And also, don't forget the additional tools I'll be showing you with reality capture, with the point clouds, or taking photos from an object, clean it up in Mudbox, do some sculpting on it, some painting, and then send it back into your favorite animation product. So I'm gonna check the chat. I'm gonna check if there are any questions left. I'm gonna answer them. And I really would like to thank you for your time, and hopefully you learned something from this webinar, and have a good day. Thank you.